Hello and welcome to my little trip down road testing memory lane. Today is a Q&A day, so thanks for all your comments and all your questions. And let's crack on, shall we? So the first one is from Oramus Bielkis. Thanks very much for your question. Hi Michael, just a right topic at the right time. I guess we were talking about some other injuries before. I'm shortly getting back into track riding after some time and getting a bit worried, specifically after a road accident at the end of last summer. Sorry to hear that. All crazy thoughts in my head. Can I still ride fast by my standards? Will I enjoy going fast? Can you please give us your thoughts about your setbacks and injuries, and how did you deal with it mentally? Thanks Michael, as always, love your videos, hope there's plenty more to come. Well, unlucky for you, there is. But yes, yeah, difficult one, isn't it? When you have a crash, a big knock, or get injured, it definitely plays havoc with your confidence. I had a big smack in 1994 where I broke a lot of bones, and I was out for ages, more because I physically couldn't ride, than anything else, than mentally. I couldn't physically ride for about 6 years, but by that time I was ready to ride again when I started. And more recently I've had a fair few racing crashes. I've broken fingers, thumbs, my pelvis, and it all sets you back. And I think the way to gain confidence, like everything in motorbikes, is just to take things easily and just go step by step. It's very, very difficult, unless you're a professional racer, just to get straight back on a bike and carry on where you left off. You've got to nibble away at it and just be patient. Just know that at the beginning you won't be your old self, but you definitely will be at some point in the future. So get back on the horse, but don't ride it too fast to begin with. Just take it easy. Just let it come to you. That's true. Whether you jump on a new bike for the first time, you're getting used to it, whether you're going to do a track day, whether you're racing, whether you're coming back from injury. With a motorbike, it's all about feeling your way in and confidence. And the more riding you do, the more confidence and feel you'll get. So that would be my advice. But thanks very much for the question, and I hope you get your mojo back. So the next question is from Trashed Life 1. Thanks for the question. What is the difference in racing a small bike versus a big bike? I'm currently switching from a 400 to 1000. Well, that is a big old jump, isn't it? 400 to 1000. That's sort of what, 70 horsepower to 200, something like that. So it's going to be a big difference, that's for sure. I mean, the first obvious one is the cost of racing a bigger bike. A bigger bike's heavier, it's more powerful, it eats through consumables more than a small bike. So you're going to be throwing more tyres at the bike. You're going to wear tyres out quicker. Tyres are expensive for big bikes as well because they're physically bigger. You're going to use more fuel, you're going to use more brake pads, and of course the bikes themselves are more expensive too. So number one is your wallet's going to get a bigger battering when you ride a bigger bike. The physicality is a lot different. Riding a 400 is kind of more like a ballerina around the track, and riding a 1000's like getting in the ring with Conor McGregor. It's thousands are brutal. They put a lot more force on your body. So under braking, because you need to brake harder, you need to stop the weight, muscling the bike through the corner, through chicanes, and of course hanging on under full acceleration. So you need to be a bit fitter, you need to be a bit musclier to ride 1000. The riding style is completely different. So on a 400, it's all about keeping up momentum, as it is on most smaller bikes. People talk about the old 250cc Grand Prix style versus a 500, for example. 250 is all about flowing, corner speed, and 500 is a stop start, and that's kind of the case when you go bigger. you change your cornering lines from U's to V's. So what I mean by that is, say if you've got a hairpin, Donington, Melbourne loop on a 400, you're going to be going in there, taking a really wide line and swooshing around the other side with lots of lean, just keeping the momentum going. On 1,000, you kind of go in at an angle, stop, turn and fire out, which is sort of more of a V shape than a U shape. And generally the corners are different shaped for that reason on a big bike, because if you spend too much time leaning over on a big bike, you can't use its superpowers. You can't use the fact it's got 200 horsepower. You're just stuck in the corner, and you'd be no faster on 1,000 than you would a 600. So it's a whole new technique to ride in 1,000. And if you wanted to kind of go anywhere for advice for that, Simon Crayfar's Moto Voodoo book, CDs and YouTube channels are a really good place to look to kind of learn the 1,000 style. It's a bit less fun 1,000 than a 400. I mean, all riding motorbikes is fun and exhilarating and all the rest of it, but because it's so difficult and it needs such a lot of brain power, you kind of get a bit of a different buzz from it. It's not a funny ha-ha riding experience. It's kind of a more serious, more of an achievement when you've mastered 1,000 and kind of funny ha-ha. An advantage of 1,000s is 1,000s will have electronics, but the small bikes don't really need them anyway. But you know, if you get 1,000s with traction control, wheelie control, that's going to make things slightly easier for you and slightly safer, quick shifters, that kind of stuff. But I think, yeah, overall, I love racing 1,000s. I love racing big bikes. You know, to be able to master one as well as you can is very, very rewarding. So best of luck with that. Get down the gym, get down the bank. Right, next question is, okay, this is from Zedric Apollo. Question: what is the purpose of buying Suzuki sports bikes if you can't see them joining major competitions? We are looking for competitiveness and upgrades from our Suzukis. The primary purpose of these events, racing, are for research and development. If they keep pulling them out from this kind of event, then what's the purpose of having them? We cannot just be stuck up from their old sports bikes. Safety is the primary goal of this competition, as well as ease of use for all of us, and eventually keeping us all enjoying what we love, which is riding. Well, thanks for the question, Cedric. I think Suzuki pulling out of racing, MotoGP, BSB, World Endurance, they've never really been in WSB recently, have they? Apart from the noughties. It's a real shame that Suzuki have pulled out. I mean, especially as they won the last few races of last year, MotoGP as well. It looked like a fantastic bike to ride. And it's a crying shame that they've gone out. But I don't really think there's as big a link between racing activities like MotoGP and the road bikes we ride anyway. Of course, racing improves the breed. But I think when you get innovations like traction control, for example, that have evolved from racing, they filter down to all road bikes anyway, you know, and it's very rare that the same software or the same hardware or the same equipment physically dribbles down to the road bike. It's more the idea. So, you know, whether Suzuki are racing in MotoGP or not, I don't think it hurts the Suzuki sports bikes. I think the reason Suzuki sports bikes haven't evolved is more a company philosophy of them looking at the, you know, their order books and seeing that they don't sell many GSX-R 1000s anymore, so what's the point in developing them? You know, and it's the ethos of that company. So opposite to that, Ducati are very racing minded, and everything about what they do is about racetrack and performance, which is why their Panigale is so good, which is why they're so dominant in WSB and MotoGP. You know, you could say Honda, for example, you know, when they were winning a lot with Marquez, MotoGP, it didn't make their fire blades any better. You know, the electronics on fire blades didn't appear till later on anyway. The first generation fire blades with electronics weren't very good. They've evolved now. But I think sort of road bike development, just operates in a completely different universe to what happens in racing. And yeah, racing does influence what happens in the road bike world. I mean, there's obviously a few exceptions, but you know, say for example, yeah, the V4 Panigale has got an engine evolved from an actual MotoGP bike, which is Dovi's 2014 Desmos Adichie. But generally, the innovations that happen in MotoGP trickle down as a thought or kind of a concept, you know, like aerodynamics. A few bikes have got wings now. Yes, that link's quite weak. I mean, look at BMW. They produce some of the best road bikes, but they struggle in racing. Aprilia make fantastic road bikes, but they don't have a WSB bike. It's kind of all over the place. So, but it's a shame that Suzuki haven't carried on with the GSX-R 1000. It's a shame they don't make a 750 or an 800 or something like that, a proper GSX-R 4-cylinder, all the modern stuff, modern suspension, modern electronics. That'd be absolutely great, because Suzuki make fantastic road bikes, and it's a real shame that they're pulling out of racing. But thank you very much for the question, Cedric. This next one's from CPU UK. Thanks for the question. Apart from the relentless march of BHP, what single other improvement has evolved motorcycling for the masses? Well, yeah, I think that power race has kind of almost fizzled out now, isn't it? The companies making super bikes, they're kind of all around 200 horsepower, aren't they? Super Nakeds are around 200 horsepower. I don't really think BHP matters anymore. I mean, having said that, BMW have just announced an M1000 XR, which is rumoured to have a superbike engine in it. But I mean, the irony of all this is that you can't use the 200 horsepower bikes. They're actually pretty dull on the road because they've got no bottom end power. But that's by the by. You could say that there are two kind of major evolutions in motorcycles that have improved things for people. The first one's electronics, improving safety. So, you know, ABS is a no-brainer on any bike, unless you're going to go to a track day, in which case ABS can be pretty dangerous because you can't stop when you want to. They're inconsistent. But for road bikes, ABS are very, very good. Traction control is a no-brainer. You know, it doesn't get in the way of you riding. It just offers a nice little safety blanket. Again, some traction control systems are a bit too intrusive for track days, but generally for road bikes, they're very, very, very good. Things like anti-wheelie make bikes easier to ride, make them less angry. And with most electronics, you can turn them all off anyway, so you've got an analog bike again. So obviously electronics are important. Quick shifters, colour dashes, Bluetooth enabled dashes where you can link your sat nav off your phone to it, you know, all really, really good. But I think the biggest evolution, the thing that's made motorcycling more enjoyable, safer, faster, possibly even cheaper, is the evolution of tyres. With every new evolution of tyres, you get more of everything. You get more safety, you get more performance, you get more wear out of them. You know, you've got the major categories of tyres: sports touring tyres, sports tyres, fast road tyres, and then track day tyres, and then racing tyres, and then off-road tyres, and all the rest of it. But I think if you were to compare, if you were to take two equal bikes, let's pick a bike. Okay, 2005 GSX-R 1000 K5, we all love them, don't we? If you were to have two identical bikes, one on the original tyres, one on brand new tyres, that bike would be completely transformed. If you were to take a racing bike with 10-year-old racing tyres and put 10 new tyres on, you'd be much faster with the new tyres and safer. So yeah, tyres without doubt, I think the best evolution in motorcycling. I think all the tyre companies and testers and engineers are sort of unsung heroes, because tyres is something that we all take for granted. We're not really interested in reading about. I think tyres are misunderstood because they're confusing to get your head around. The names are confusing. You know, some people don't understand the categories, what they should put on their bikes. You know, I get a lot of tyre questions, but you know, tyres literally save your skin, and I think they've made motorcycling a much better place year on year, and they're still evolving. They're still brilliant. So thank you very much for that question. Next, Dark Horse PSH. Thanks for your question. Thank you for your insight and thorough bike reviews. No problem. I currently ride a 2015 Super Duke 1290R, and I'm thinking about upgrading to a new Super Duke Evo or Journos V4. Well, you might have done this already actually, it's quite an old question. But anyway, I do not do track days, but my normal riding consists of 2-hour aggressive rides on technical back roads. I like the sound of that. I'm 6'3" and 225 pounds. Any advice on which bike you would recommend given all of the above would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Well, I think after some careful thought that you've probably got the right bike anyway. You know, if you're tall, I'd say the Super Duke is probably one of the roomiest. You know, I bang on a lot about Journos V4 and it is brilliant, but it is based on an RSV4 and it isn't the roomiest of all the Super Nakeds. I think Street Fighter is probably a little bit too serious. But what I would recommend is Yamaha MT10 or MT10 SP. It's not the prettiest bike in the world, but it ticks so many boxes. It is comfortable, it is easy to ride. It is a Yamaha, so it's going to be ultra reliable. It's got a fantastic engine, one of the best engines of any road bikes out there, you know, up in the sort of top 5 or 6 great engines that you can have right now. The cross-plane crank engine, it's kind of got the power delivery, an electric motor, just elastic. It's got the kind of the sound of a V4, punch of a V-twin, the smoothness of an inline 4. It's just a magic engine. So if you wanted to move away from your Super Duke, I'd get an MT10 if you're that size. But if you want to stay in the KTM family, then a Super Duke Evo would probably be your best bet as well. Or just keep your bike, save a ton of money, and just put new tyres on it and polish it. Because you've got a great bike. You know, Super Nakeds haven't really evolved that much since 2015. You know, apart from the fact you've got the 200 brake horsepower brigade, M1000R, V4S, and the Brutale 1000RR, all 30 odd grand of it. But those 200 horsepower bikes aren't really that much fun unless you go on the track, and then you go on the track and then you've got no wind protection. You can't ride them that fast anyway, so they're more of a kind of a dinkle waving kind of motorcycle more than anything, and they are beautiful. I mean, if you can afford one, why not? But I think the slightly lower power Super Nakeds are much better. Thank you very much for your question. Next, Manoj R. Hello mate. Regarding the comments about publications favouring specific style of bikes, I think I was saying that, you know, the motorcycle press sort of reflect what's going on in the bike world. So obviously it was sports bikes, it was retro bikes, it's now adventure bikes. But sometimes I get the feeling that sometimes they want to kind of set the agenda and almost encourage people to buy certain bikes. I don't know, got no proof for that. But anyway, there used to be, still is, gossip that you guys favoured Triumphs over anything else. Fact is, Triumphs build great bikes and they do take their craft seriously, though other companies are making better bikes in their segments these days. Well, yeah, I used to get that a lot about favouring Triumphs, but that's really not the case. I mean, you know, as road testers, there's no pressure, where I work anyway, at Bauer Media, that it's got Bike Magazine, Ride Magazine and MCN. There's never any pressure from editors, advertising, marketing to favour certain bikes. In actual fact, probably a lot of the advertising department hate us because they're the ones that have got to phone dealers up and go into dealers and speak to people, speak to the trade, you know, during the same week as we've slated a certain bike. So, you know, the road testers don't make it easy for the advertisers. But there's never any kind of talk about, oh, you know, can you go easy on that bike? Can we make that bike win? Just never, because each brand makes so many different kinds of bikes. You know, there are great Triumphs, there's not so good ones. There's great Ducatis, not so good ones. So to kind of recommend a brand never ever happens. And it's funny, when the Daytona 675 came out, everyone was saying how pro Triumph we were. But back then, we had zero relationship with Triumph. We had to buy a Daytona 675 to run as a long-termer. We weren't allowed on any of the launches. We used Kevin Ash as a freelancer for our launch reports, God rest his soul. Sometimes we went to launches under the guise of other magazines. I went as Arena magazine once. Things are a lot different now. We've got a good working relationship with Triumph now, but definitely no favours each way. You just got to be honest. That's all you can do when you're a road tester. Just be honest, as I've said before. And yeah, Triumph's made some great bikes. I love the Triumph Tiger 1200 Explorer GT that I ran as a long-termer last year, but I absolutely hated the Speed Triple 1200RR that I also ran as a long-termer. So yeah, I think the world would be a dull place if you just said everything was brilliant, or you were forced to say everything was brilliant. Yeah, we're as honest as we can be. Our opinion is honest anyway. Whether you agree with that opinion or not is a different story, because we've all got different opinions. But yeah, there's no funny business our end. But thanks very much for your question. Right, this is from Mr. God, I'm so far King Board. Hi Michael, thanks for your question. Love the channel. With regard to sports bikes, I've loved them since I first started riding in the mid-60s and still love them now, but my wrists, elbows, shoulders, back, knees and hips have a different opinion. I know that feeling. I still love the look of a sleek fared sports bike with all the goodies and clip-ons down by the front wheel spindle, but riding one would be fun for 5 minutes but torture for the rest of the time. I'm sure as the UK's biking population, blimey, I'm sure as the UK's biking population ages, that this is a large part of the driver towards nakeds and adventure bikes. That's true. I think there could be definitely a niche in the market for bikes that still had the sports bike look, but with a more relaxed ergos that would allow old gits like me to still enjoy the sports bike vibe, minus the pain. Could this actually be a thing? Well, I'm completely 100% behind you on that one. I don't understand why the manufacturers don't make sporty looking bikes that are comfortable. You know, I suppose the closest to that would be a Ninja 1000 SX or a GSX-S 1000 GT Suzuki. They look sporty and they're comfortable, but they're sports tourers. They're built down to a price. You know, they're unquestionably brilliant and fast, but they're not sports bikes per se, with the nice brakes and the nice handling and the amazing power and that drop dead gorgeous looks. The H2SX, very sporty. Busa, very sporty but a bit heavy. So yeah, I'd love to see a Fireblade that you could fit on, or any of the super bikes. I mean, I suppose you can get the thrill from a super naked. You know, that would be the closest thing to what you want there, really, to the performance of a sports bike, which is more comfortable. But you haven't got the wind protection and you haven't necessarily got the looks. I mean, I find it quite bizarre that, I mean, for example, I went to an Alpine Stars crash helmet launch the other day in Italy, and we had a racetrack to ourselves and a line of all the sports bikes. And I've always said this, and it happens at tyre launches, the journalists gravitate towards the bikes they really like, not the ones they say they like in print. And the bikes that were left behind, there was a minibus going from like one location to the track. I was the last out of the minibus, and everyone else had their towels on the bikes. And the ones that were left over, the ZX10, really cramped, Aprilia RSV4, really cramped, and Fireblade, really cramped. They're the ones left over, just because they're so small. I don't understand why. Because, okay, they're kind of homologation bikes, aren't they, for racing? But if you were to buy a ZX10 and race it, you'd put rear sets on, you'd probably put a different seat on, you might change the bars, you'd completely change the riding position anyway. Same with track days. If you're a serious track day rider, you might change the ergonomics anyway. So who is it for? Who are those cramped riding positions for? All they do is put people off buying them. The roomiest thousands are R1 and a Panigale. They're probably the roomiest. And then after that, S1000RR, GSX-R1000, and then after that, you've got the real cramped ones. But yeah, I'd love the manufacturers to make physically bigger sports bikes, beautiful big sports bikes that you could kind of admire, like you could do when you sit and look at an R1 or whatever. Caterham actually do it. They, in their Caterham 7, their little sort of kit car looking thing, they make a wide bodied one for normal people to sit in. So I think manufacturers should do that. Let's get a petition together. Thanks very much, and I hope that wasn't too boring for you. Right, next, Flexi Wing. Right, 2 more. What's the time? 27 minutes. Okay. Thanks for your question, Flexi Wing. A great video. Wish there was another test like. But the question is, what tyre would you put on a Honda NC 750X that gets ridden with enthusiasm? Great fun to keep up with the fast boys on Welsh country roads. Well, good on you. Honda NC 750X isn't the first choice for scratching through some of Wales's finest roads, but it's a very, very capable bike. I think the best tyre for that bike would be a sports touring tyre. I don't really think you need to go any sportier because you haven't really got the power. The latest generation of sports touring tyres are absolutely superb. They steer like sports bikes tyres used to. They've got fantastic grip and they're really, really durable and are fantastic in the wet weather. So you should go for one of the latest generation of sports touring tyres from Pirelli, Metzeler, Michelin, Bridgestone, Continental. What have I missed? Pirelli, Metzeler, Continental, Bridgestone. It will come to me. But anyway, the point is, in Ride magazine this month and in MCN this week, there is a big tyre comparison test where we put all the sports touring tyres head to head. We rode them all on the same day. We rode them blind. We rode them on a GSX-1000 GT, and discovered that they're all good. So if you like a certain brand, just go for it. But there were big differences, and like all tyre tests we've done, as I've said before, you can tell the brand of tyre within a quarter of a mile of setting off. They're so different in their character. They're so similar in what they do, but the way they get there are different. But there was one tyre that was much, much better than the rest. So you'll have to check that out. And finally, CRF 1000L Oz. Put my glasses on. Hey Neezy, are you coming back down under in January? The Cape Barren geese are wanting to know. Well, thanks very much for your question. Every year since 2015, I've been very lucky enough to do the Phillip Island Classic in January. And it's a massive classic event. And within that, there's the International Challenge, which is like a match race between England, America, or UK, America, Ireland, New Zealand. And, you know, the McWilliamses of the world go, John McGuinness, Peter Hickman, lots of top Brit riders against the Aussies like Cameron Donald, Bo Beaton, Troy Corser, Sean Giles. The Americans came along with Colin Edwards a few years ago. I mean, it's a proper little thing. And I've been racing a few bikes down there for Carl Cox Motorsport. Carl Cox, the DJ, who's a He's a legend in the DJ box, and he's a legend on 2 wheels and 4 wheels. He puts his life and soul into everything he does, and yeah, his enthusiasm is boundless and absolutely incredible. But he used to invite us over to Australia, where he lives, for half a year and ride his bike. So I spent a few years riding a GSX-R 750 with an 1100 engine in it, and 1990, the last one before the upside down forks, and we did really well on that. That was a few years developing the bike, and we ended up getting some podiums and some wins. I've been there on their Katana, been there on Team Classic Suzuki, where we got some top 10s and some pretty nice lap times on basically a Michael Dunlop XR69, and in more recent times one of Carl's own XR69s. The last time I went was 2020, and just before COVID hit, and we were doing well. We got a race win, but it turned to disaster on the Saturday in one of the races. Craig Ditchburn on a TZ 750 was a few riders in front of me and dropped fluid around the southern loop, turn 2, and a few riders crashed. I picked the bike up to avoid it and basically went on the grass, fell off, airbag went off and everything. I wasn't too injured, bit knocked about. Got the bike back together for Sunday morning. Again, I think I won a race, and then in the next race I was dicing with Marty Craggle, who's an ex-Aussie Superbike champion, and I think he's done World Superbike. Mad Eyes Craggle, I think they call him. He was on a TZ 750 and I was on my Suzuki, and he was more nimble in the corners and I was faster down the straights, and we had a bit of a battle. And on the last lap, I should have waited. On the last lap, I overtook him down the front straight at Phillip Island, went into turn 1 together, and as we went into turn 2, which is a left, he stuffed up the inside and we collided and crashed. Now, I think it was his fault. He might have thought it was my fault. But either way, smashed our bike to pieces. I broke my 2 fingers in my hand, and it was a week before I had to do the Honda Fireblade launch. So went to A&E, got my hand put in a cast. I had to cut the cast off on the Wednesday to fly to Qatar and then ride the blade with a broken hand, which was absolute agony. I couldn't do lefts because I couldn't counter steer against the bar, but that was the most recent blade, a really important new model. So, you know, to miss that would have been disastrous. So still did a decent test. It didn't really matter that I was in pain apart from when I was writing. That was the hardest thing. But anyway, I digress. COVID stopped us going back to do that event, and now that racing is back up and running again, I think the lack of momentum of that event has kind of killed it off. I was actually speaking to Carl recently, and he said there's no chance of that happening again. So we've got a really nice XR69 that we can't race at the moment. So I don't know what we're going to do with it, but I'd love to come back down under. I absolutely love the place. Hopefully I can race at Phillip Island again. They've got a new track near Adelaide called the Bends, which looks really cool as well, which they were telling me about. So, but anyway, I don't miss those geese though. So, well done for making it 35 minutes in. I'll do a few more of these Q&As because I've got loads and loads of questions. So maybe I'll do a few more of these before any more blasts from the past or geek out. But thanks very much for watching. Thanks for your questions. Keep safe, keep your shiny side up, and I'll see you soon.